I have been asked by the fellow panel members to say a bit about the Prince Takamado Japan Centre. Fortunately, previous speakers have done a lot of my work for me, even in Professor Masto's talk. He mentioned a number of the things that the Prince Takamado Japan Centre has undertaken over the years. Ambassador Yamanouchi has mentioned how 20 years is a long time for a center, and there are changes in both plans, but also the kinds of people that we serve and their interests. Young people today have different desires and interests than, say, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I won't try to recount everything, but the PTJC has undertaken quite a diverse array of programs, some pretty consistently. For example, from the very beginning, supporting language education by administering the Japanese language proficiency test, which you've heard a little bit about, supporting exchanges that take students to Japan to learn language, like at Ritsumeikan University, providing bursary scholarships to help them do that. It's also supported conferences, sometimes about language pedagogy, but also in other fields. The kinds of topics that those conferences have covered have varied depending on the interests of participants, scholars available, about language pedagogy, but about the history of the atomic bombings in Japan, about early modern Japanese prints, about Japanese game culture. And then there have been forms of support for scholars here at the U of A, and to a certain degree elsewhere, small grants that support their research and also their teaching, things like sponsoring of film series. Some of the projects of the PTJC have been tried and maybe didn't work out so well. When I first came to the university, we had a teleconferencing program, the Kanji network, where we used some late 1990s technology to try to connect scholars here with scholars at UBC and other institutions. And I think it was maybe a bit ahead of its time. The number of people reached was not as great as what's now possible through something like a webinar that the Consulate-General supports. The challenge, as I see it, is to find how we can try to pursue the mandate of the center, taking stock of things that have worked well, things that have not been quite as successful, try to identify in some general ways, but also some very specific ways. What are the kinds of things that we want to focus on? With the seed grant program that you learned about, we have a focus on addressing some very contemporary issues. As Professor Masta has reminded us, that's not always there are other things too that are equally important. We have a remarkable moment, as Ambassador Yamanouchi has mentioned, in the current geopolitical context because of lots of political forces and economic ones, and realignments. I'm not the best person to speak to this, but Japan and Canada have closer ties than ever before, and there's a lot of potential for collaboration between Canadian and Japanese partners. And at the same time, there's a huge interest in Japan by the future of our countries, the young people, interested in things like anime and manga, but also potentially things like hyakunin isshu. So how do we find a way to take advantage of those conditions while also solving some of the structural challenges that the PTJC has faced? It takes money to run programs. The Prince Takamado Japan Canada Memorial Fund supports a lot of activities, but the more that we can grow that fund, the more that we can do, which is why donations by Mitsubishi and Marubeni and Driving Force, like the ones that the president announced, are so important. How do we continue to build up that capacity so that we can do more? And then how do we guide the programs that we develop? And I think it is best done through conversation with techs on the one hand, but also with each other and with you, community members from various communities. That's the reason why we have this dialogue. So I'm going to stop talking now. We're going to, at least initially, proceed in sequence, and provide some perspectives from our very different institutional, professional, cultural contexts, and then have a little bit of an open conversation using the questions that arise. And towards the end, we very much want to bring everyone into this conversation. Ambassador Yamanouchi, could I ask you to begin?
ありがとうございます。Thank you very much, Walter-san. You just laid out every important element already. So our job is to be half done. But let me introduce myself. My name is Kanji Yamanouchi. I arrived Ottawa 2.5 years ago. And this 2.5 years was so fulfilling. And I just realized this legacy of Prince Takamado Japan Centre for teaching and research, so critical, yet with the reasons you just mentioned. The mission is very simple. We fulfill the vision of Prince Takamado. He was so enthusiastic about two things: to foster friendship between our two countries, and also to support post-secondary education in this country. That would also fulfilling for the betterment of Canada-Japan relations too. Then that's the mission. Then how to make it happen? So I think there are 2 or 3 very important things. But most important thing is financial basis. If you do anything, it requires a cost. Unless we have those finance to cost those things, just all those ideas is just idea. When we have the actual sort of resources of funding, then we have human resources. Then we can make it happen. So I think the challenge, it looks very complicated, but it's very simple. How we build the financial basis for this amazing institution for the next 20 years. I think that is a fundamental question.
Thank you, Ambassador. That's very helpful. Consul-General Takehiko Wajima.
Thanks so much for my name is Takehiko Wajima. I'm the Consul-General of Japan in Calgary. My jurisdiction is the Alberta, Saskatchewan, and then Manitoba, and then Northern Territories and Nunavut. I'm stationed in Calgary. Edmonton is also the very important city. So I counted how many times already I've been here since I came here in Calgary. And then this is my, I think, 6 times. So almost every month, come Edmonton. So I like to continue. I really like to, starting my the comments, to express my deep gratitude to the PTJC, and especially the Mr. Davis, that you working so hard. I know that you spent some time and energy, and then make it possible today. I had a chance to meet Her Imperial Highness Princess Takamado before coming here when I was assigned to be the Consul-General in Calgary. As you know, that as you've seen in the video message today, her passion and affection to the PTJC is quite strong. She asked me to help you and then to materialize today. I'm very happy and feel relief that you're installed in the successful ceremonial event yesterday and today. But our challenge is next 20 years. And then, so I'm very, happy to part of this discussion today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Consul General. Ms. Noriko Yamamoto of the Japan Foundation, the Executive Director of the Japan Foundation, Toronto.
Thank you, Walter. First of all, I would like to extend our heartfelt congratulations on the 20th anniversary of the center on behalf of the foundation. My name is Noriko Yamamoto, and I am an Executive Director of the Japan Foundation, Toronto. It has been 2 years since I arrived in Toronto. Not as much as the Consul-General Wajima visited, but the Edmonton is also the city of other cities that I visited the most frequently during the past 2 years. So thanks to the center, the PTJC, invited me for a couple of times, and really appreciate for this opportunity to be here. Let me begin with a couple of connections that the Japan Foundation has had with the center. The first connection is that the Japan Foundation had a privilege to have had His Imperial Highness Prince Takamado as our esteemed staff member since 1981 for more than 20 years. And even though it was before my time joining the foundation, I was shared many fond memories and stories from my senior colleagues, especially about his passion to Canada, his appreciation, deep appreciation to culture, and a strong belief in the culture exchange, the people-to-people exchange. And that meant a lot to us, the staff member of Japan Foundation. It's a real legendary ideal way of the staff members to be as a part of the foundation mission. So this is one of the connections that we have. And another thing is on the establishment of the PTJC Memorial Fund, the donations that was raised by the committee member in Japan from the Japanese companies or individuals were given to the university through our Japan Foundation's designated donation program. That's another connection. It's happened from 2005 to 2008. I'm pleased to congratulate the successful growth of the funds over the past 20 years. React to the initial questions raised by the author. I'm very much happy to discuss more for later discussion.
Great, thank you very much. And not last, but next, Ms. Christine Nakamura, Vice President of the Central Canada Office of the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada.
Thank you very much, Walter. And again, my congratulations to you and to the Prince Takamado Japan Centre for its 20th anniversary. The work that you've done, I learned a lot today, actually, of the programming that you have done. And so congratulations. And I know there was a lot of hard work over those 20 years. But I think what's important is, as the ambassador and the Consul-General mentioned, is the 20 years into the future. If I can just give a little bit of background and my connection to the Prince Takamado family. I'm a former Canadian diplomat. I served in Tokyo on 2 terms. And during my last term, I had met the Prince on my first assignment in Tokyo a number of times because he was the Canadian Prince, as the Canadians would like to think, because he frequented our embassy quite often. From that relationship, I moved on. I know that they were talking about the Prince Takamado Japan Centre just before I left Tokyo in 2000 and about the Memorial Fund, and I know that our ambassador at the time was working on getting Japanese companies to donate towards this project. But I was gone by the time it was actually done. I was in Seoul, actually, in Korea, when the Prince passed away. I got word immediately that he had succumbed. And it was shortly after that that I believe the Prince Takamado Centre was actually opened. But since then, I've had the privilege in my role on my second assignment in Japan to meet the Princess quite frequently. And in fact, one of the memories that I have dear to my heart is that she came to me and asked me to encourage her third daughter, Ayako-sama, Princess Ayako, to study in Canada too, precisely to continue the legacy of the Prince, because he had studied in Canada and loved Canada so much. She said, I can't, I'm a mother. She's not going to listen to me, so Christine, can you convince her to go and study? I want one of my 3 daughters to study in Canada. I briefed her for several hours at the embassy, and she did come to study in Victoria, BC, later on a little bit at UBC, but it's not much well known about her studies here, but she did study in Canada. Just to say that I would like to help as an advisory council member. I'm one of the remaining ones, I think, from the ones that were appointed a few years ago to the council. I'd like to help not only from my personal perspective, but also from the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, if there's anything we can do to help raise the profile of the centre, because I have to say that parts of Canada doesn't know that it exists. So I think by broadening and expanding raising awareness through collaboration with the rest of Canada to raise the profile, because the Prince, as we all know, was a Prince of Japan. He's from the imperial family. I think it's extremely important to raise the story of the Prince and why Canada was so important to him. And now the Princess Takamado has taken on the role that he used to take. I think it's important to get the information and awareness out throughout Canada and beyond, quite frankly, and if anything we can do. I think that will answer the question of the funding issue. I think probably because it's so unknown at this point in time, the donations may be kind of insular resource or market from where you can get help. And I think that if you raise it and expand it more and get more national recognition, I think that there's new options for helping to fund the center.
Thank you. That's wonderful advice. I have some possibly random thoughts, but in listening to the various presentations today, I noticed some patterns and I think themes that are emerging that I don't have an answer to, but I think maybe we can talk about them and, gather ideas from others as well. The value of connections and networks and of collaboration really came out in multiple ways. In learning about the Gordon Hirabashi anti-racism project, collaboration between the university and the Japanese Canadian community, where it was people who were kind of not necessarily together at the beginning, but they came together and by working on projects and facing challenges, they came up with all kinds of really interesting stuff. And even in Professor Masto's talk, we've seen how in the writing and reading of texts that knowledge is produced by a kind of conversation across time by elite writers and makers of popular prints and the people who are consuming them. There's a kind of rich knowledge and economy that's generated by their interaction. How do we identify ways that can really create that and make that happen?
I would say 3-4 elements that is very positive one. The name of the institution, Prince Takamado Japan Centre, stands a shining name, and it contains a lot of value, just as Nakamura-san said. And we need to fulfill that sort of name. And also, Walter-san, you just mentioned amazing possibility and potentials of this institution, and 100 issue, and the other sort of the Gordon Hirabashi's legacies and what you have done in the past 20 years. But the thing is, we see the possibility and the potential so much. We have the great name. If we see the world today, it requires what we are doing is contributing to the peace. No question about that. And this city itself, as a shining city for the next generation, not only gas and oil, but also this new energies and AI and other things. So we have very good elements. Then the thing is, we need to have very specific strategy to build this institution further, live up to the vision of the Prince. Then coming back to the original question. Yes, we need to more name recognition in the country here or beyond. Then in order to do that, we need to have financial resources. Otherwise, we can't make the brochure. Otherwise, we cannot reach out to the other people. We can set out the goals, or we can set up the strategies. But the thing is, in order to make it happen, we have to have the solid financial basis. But I think it is a very encouraging thing for the President Flanagan's initiative to provide a very stable 5 years financial support. And also, now we're hearing all those generous support from the Japanese companies. I hope Canadian companies will join. We need to do two things. One is to sort out the programs and strategy. But the second thing is we have to have the solid strategy to raise financial support from the government, from the university, from the private sectors, and also the public sectors.
Actually, yesterday and today, it was a very good opportunity, even for me, to learn much about the PTJC and also the University of Alberta itself. I understand that you already start the screening or the application for the new director for the PTJC, and then I think that they will, determine by the end of the May next year. I totally agree with the ambassador that the strategy is quite important. But in order to have concrete, good strategy, we have good director and also some staff who support the directors. Regarding the financial staff, of course, that I'm very appreciate the University of Alberta to provide the 5 years seed grant and other additional financial resources, and that's great. But that is 5 years. This is just my personal story, but my grandfather gave me a sort of the note of the life lesson he learned from his 80 years old, something like that, when I was a high school student. And one of chapter is about the marriage. And then he said the health marriage must be two factors. One is the health, mentally and physically, and also the financial independent. This can be applied to the institution as well. And then we have to aim how we can be independent financially. So that means that the fundraising, and we need to collaborate not only from the university itself, but from the other, especially the private sector. I am the Consul-General who is in charge in Alberta. So many Japanese companies, coming to the Alberta, and then they are looking for the opportunity. We have more of a chance to work with them. So we have to make a strategy with the nice director and to how we can cooperate with those Japanese companies.
Just add to that, I think that the advisory council, after any 20 years, I think you need to review things. We're always reflecting on how we can improve our own programming. What happened 20 years ago is very different from the young people and our future leaders. 20 years ago, we didn't use, the digital platforms very much. Now everything's digital. It's a good time to review not just the programming, but maybe involving the young people. The advisory council needs to be renewed, that's for sure. Myself and David are the only ones that are left from the original ones that were appointed prior to the pandemic. So number one, I think the advisory council has to be renewed. We need to bring in the corporate sector, along with what the Consul-General said. I think that it can't be just think tanks, academic type people on that advisory council. You need to bring in the Japanese companies that are interested and get them involved, because once they know about what the value of the Prince Takamado Japan Centre is about, I think they will gain interest and they will feel that they would like to contribute or to help make sure that the life, it's sustainable. But so that's one thing. But also I think in a committee to go across Canada, have representation from key institutions, what have you, and bring them together so that we can raise the Prince Takamado banner more nationally. In that, you need some young people, Gen Z and whatnot, because they will come out with the ideas. They will tell us, I'm old, I'm in my second career. The young people need to be brought into that conversation to tell us what it is that they would like to see the Japan Centre do, what they would like to see taught there, or the collaboration. They're so connected to people around the world because of the social media. They can probably bring in and raise the profile a lot more. So I think time for a bit of a reflection on the structures, on how we can get the word out that this center exists, and to perhaps revisit the types of program that we did up until now and what we do into the future. And don't get me wrong, I did Kobun Taishi in university. I don't know what possessed me to do Kobun. It was my hardest subject at U of T, but like the senseis today talked about, I think that the traditional Japanese culture is extremely important to understand the real Japanese mind, Japanese thinking, Japanese culture. In fact, in my own foundation that I work in, I repeat that often. How many years have you lived in Japan, or how many years have you lived in Korea? Do you really understand that culture? Because unless you live and learn and work in that culture, you can study a lot, and it's the same with the diplomats. You know, do you really grasp it? That's another story, right? So I think that involving the young people, your scholars, your students, your faculty too, I think in that discussion to revitalize the programming, I think would be a good idea.
Like a similar discussion, some comments. The Japan Foundation works for the mutual, furthering mutual understanding between Japan and Canada through language, arts, and dialogue. And then one of the area we work is the Japan studies. Even though there are almost like 20 established Japan studies institution in Canada, PTJC is unique in having a mission. It serves entire Canada. So it's very different from, this mission is for beyond the campus, but for entire Canada. Because with this mission, there's a lot of potentials that the center can do to nurturing the friendship and then further becoming the research hub of the Japan studies in Canada. Of course, the capacity itself is always the important part. The earlier lecture by the Dr. Sutton mentioned about the decentralized cooperation, and that's really made me think, oh, this is it. And why don't we, the center, fully utilize a lot of stakeholders or advisory committee or discussion group to discuss further about what the ideal program would be to serve entire Canada. I totally agree with Kamura-san about revitalize the advisory committee. That would be the great path for the next step. And also, as a foundation side, the Japan Foundation, and then as well the Asia Pacific Foundation, we're happy to be work together. Of course, we have been working together, and it's a great partner. We truly appreciate and grateful. But of course, we are happy to explore more what we can contribute to achieve the shared purpose.
Both of you've just said, and also is relevant to some of the things that we saw today, students. You know, students in Professor Masto's talk, or his response to my question, you know, how did you learn to read hentai kanbun? Well, by teaching it and by having this competition with the students and interacting and learning from them or with them in a particular way in the spring. The University of Alberta East Asian Studies Student Association, KGK, they had a Lunar New Year's festival, and they invited the PTJC to have a table. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. So we had a table, and we tried to make it interactive. I had some sheets of paper with markers, and the question is, you know, what can the PTJC do for you? What do you need? What would you like? Multiple people were writing scholarships, bursaries. And this is in relation to what the ambassador and the Consul-General were mentioning. Money is so important, both in enabling students to learn, in running programs that enable students to learn, and yet it's also, you know, a limiting factor if we have so many different audiences and communities, if we need to look nationally, which we really do need to, and also on the campus. I don't have an easy answer, but it seems that even in this one regard, the students are telling us something that's quite important.
Through the discussion, probably we are pretty much on the same page. We know what we need to do. We know what we can do, and we know what we should do. Then everybody agree upon that we need to build a strategy, and etc. But I have one suggestion, because if we talk about all those things in general terms, we can continue forever. Why don't we have a certain target year, like a 2028? 2028 is the 100 years anniversary of the establishment of official relations diplomatic relations between Japan and Dominion of Canada. So this is a wonderful century, 100, so 2028. We have 4 years to go. Then by that year, why don't we have some specific strategy or action plans to fulfill the vision set by the Prince Takamado, that we can show the world that this is Prince Takamado Japan Centre. This is what we're doing. Why don't you join us? So 4 years is enough time. If we fulfill what we want to do next year, it's too short. 4 years would be the nice timing. The 2028 might be the target year. And on top of that, 2028 is 120th anniversary of establishment of this great institution, our University of Alberta.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Please.
Ambassador already referred to the anniversary year of the Japan and Canada because I'm Consul-General in Alberta. So I'd like to add one more anniversary year. This is 2030. It's the 50th anniversary between Alberta and Hokkaido for its sister state relations. We had 6 years. After that, you finish the 4 years strategy, maybe one addition to then gradually next 5 years, and you can continue that.
Responding to the ambassador's question, I think the very important question that we should work for the coming years. As I earlier said, that this center is very unique and significant in having a mission to serve in entire Canada. I believe that this center can play a significant role in developing a network, building a network of the Japan specialists or people who are doing about Japan. Let me share one example. I hope this might be helpful, but we have run the network program for the past almost 15 years in the United States with the collaboration with the Mansfield Foundation. It's called the U.S.-Japan Network for the Future program. It is to aim to build a network and enhance the network of the Japan specialists in terms of the U.S.-Japan relationship and also the policy-making process. It's a 2-year program and assembled with a study trip or panel discussion or meeting or retreat or symposium or publication, sort of 2-year program enhances actually the scholarly tie as well as to sort of give the right discussion in the topic itself. Right now, already 100 cohort members are ready, and it's sort of be a great asset. And I think the PTJC already has existing a lot of program, the scholarly program or grant program, and then it's already can create the sort of network, but also enhance the function of the network with the title of the Prince Takamado. I think it's also help develop the profile of the center, and it will help in the future through the knowledge and connections and the great supporter for the center. So I strongly believe that it's good to work with the perspective of the building a network of the people who involved in the PTJC.
Speaking of networks and thinking of Ambassador Consul-General, you were suggesting that really should involve our audience in the conversation as well. Is now a good time to begin that, you think?
So I really, really appreciate so many of these ideas. I think attention is the most valuable thing we can give to a beautiful entity like this, and we've had the attention of 2 amazing ambassadors, and President and Her Imperial Highness. And I love these ideas about finding focal points. The 100th anniversary of Canadian relations, the 50th anniversary of Hokkaido, Alberta. I wonder if any of you can think of it, maybe not annual, but biannual. And the reason I'm asking that is partly to galvanize the attention of these potential networks. In the past, sometimes PTJC has helped with the Japan Studies Conference that moves around the country. And for sure, we have a unique space in hosting these Japanese proficiency exams. And, you know, in the past we did JCAC, which was students moving back and forth. It was an interesting program, but it became an annual focal point. So I do really love the ideas of the 100th and the 50th. Those are very pivotal. So if anything about an annual, it doesn't have to happen now. And the other one I was just going to toss out is the cities, like the sister city relationships that Alberta and, well, you know, provinces, cities across Canada have with cities across Japan. I don't know if any of you have seen or have any thoughts of those.
It's a good suggestion.
I'm not talking as ambassador. I talk about myself. So this is not the view of the embassy or view of the government of Japan, but I think that this is very important suggestion, the focal point of something here. Every year, this say should be April or somewhere, everybody come together here, like a final of the Japanese speech contest. The Prince Takamado has been supporting this Japanese like a speech. Yes, semi-final could take place anywhere, but final is always come to this institution. If you love the Japanese high school baseball, everybody goes to Koshien. So like everybody goes to University of Alberta, Prince Takamado Centre for the final of Japanese speech contest. Something like that would be one idea. Well, again, I'm not saying the government, but just my personal idea.
This is my experience. But to attract the young students or the who loves the Japanese culture through the anime or whatever, maybe we can organize sort of the Japan Bowl, which is taken place in the United States already, I think, and then so it's sort of the contest to compete each other about their knowledge, or their understanding of Japanese pop culture or anime, whatever. Maybe we need a sponsor. From maybe WestJet or ANA, and then if we can provide the round trip ticket or something like that. So that would be nice, I think.
Japan Bowl in Consul-General, there is one in Vancouver and in Toronto right now, but there isn't one here. And in terms of how it's funded, it's actually fundraising by Japan Society, and I think it's the same in the United States, isn't it? That would be good to expand it, I think, definitely to Calgary as well, or Alberta. The other thing I think the professor here talked about we don't have to do anything immediately. I think we do. I would suggest that you start now to build up towards the 100th anniversary and do an annual event here at U of A at the Prince Takamado Japan Centre, but try to bring in people from across Canada. One big conference a year would be enough, I think, but that raises the profile and make it attractive enough to get, people interested in Japan throughout Canada to come. Even today's event, or yesterday and today, I think that people that are interested in Japan might have come from other parts of Canada. I mean, I came from Ontario, but majority of the people are Albertans here. And I think that if we had enough time, and certainly APFC would have been able to help to get the word out, to bring representatives from the other educational institutions, as well as companies. I can tell you from our work with the young Japanese and Canadians interested in Japan is that it's not just about the academic studies. They're worried now. One key concern of young people today is work after university, right? What we've done in Toronto for Kakeashi, for example, for the alumni, is we've brought in Kigyo, the industry people reps, to talk about job employment opportunities for them once they graduate, and including Canadian companies that are looking for Japanese speakers, Japanese graduates who understand Japan or are focused on Japan. We brought in like Pasona, for example, which is a headhunting talent searching company. So that's one way of bringing industry and students together through the PT Prince Takamado Japan Centre, an event where You can bring the young students out interested in Japan, bring the industry people out, so that they can start networking at that level so that they can think about the future. And then that way you can also encourage the business community to take an interest and perhaps go on the advisory board. That's why it's important to get them on the advisory board.
And event is very important. But an event, the certain time of the day, event start and finish. That's it. Unless we record it. So I think it is very important to make a final report or report of this 20th anniversary event for in the past 2 days. We did so much. Amazing lectures by 2 distinguished scholars. I would say this panel discussion is also full of ideas. But if we do nothing, just to say 10 days after, people wouldn't remember unless we record it, to print it as a nice cover, and so that we can tell the people that this is what we are doing. This is 20 years of PTJC. I think just starting from today, not just let all words go into the air, but we should print it so that people remember what we talked in the past 2 days. That is a great introduction for the people who don't know PTJC yet. So that is my another suggestion.
Record it, and put it on the website so that people who don't come can see it. And you can send the link out to the communities or stakeholders, right?
I should mention that we have been recording this with an eye. Grant is back there, and we're going to use the recording to write up a summary. And Ambassador, your idea of publishing it is a wonderful idea. Thank you. I see a question. Dean Wood.
I just wanted to say I really agree with the comments that we do need to act immediately. We made some really strategic investments into the PTJC, but they are short term. There's 5 years of stable funding. We are making a long-term investment in the directorship. But the goal here is to really, I guess, rejuvenate and elevate this fantastic center. It's done a lot of great things, but as many people have said, we're thinking about the next 20 years now. And so I think we do have to act immediately and use events like this and conversations like this as a springboard. So, as the ambassador says, 10 days from now that the conversations haven't evaporated, but really building upon those. And so again, I really wanted to also to reiterate that in my capacity as dean of the faculty, that I'm very much committed to this center. I'm so thankful for all of our distinguished guests for coming today. We had a great conversation yesterday at the advisory council. And I think we have a lot of work to do, and I think we need to get to work immediately on a number of different fronts in moving the center forward. So look forward to more conversations with all of you.
Thank you. Les.
Some of the comments about maybe having some collaborations and having events that bring people from outside of Alberta to this and give it much more profile, and we should start today. It's not going to be today, but next week, I'm going to be back in Edmonton. National Association of Japanese Canadians is having an annual conference here, and we're going to be bringing representatives from 21 member organizations from Maritimes, the Prairie Provinces, BC, Yukon, and we're going to be meeting here. And one of the ways that we're doing this conference is we are collaborating with the U of A and with PTJC. It's a new model for us. That we're very excited about how we can maybe sustain it. I think it's a win-win, and something that is a maybe not an annual but a biannual event is that we every 2 years our Human Rights Committee gives out a Human Rights Award. It's in the name of Gordon Hirabayashi. Really hoping that this film the documentary that we saw the trailer for earlier today, it will be ready. And it will be shown at our gala dinner, at the dinner that we're going to be having, raising the profile of Gordon Hirabayashi, of course, obviously raising the U of A, PTJC, all of this, giving visibility to all of our centers all across Canada. And the same way that Oliver was talking about, how is it that this giant taught for so many years at U of A and we don't know about it today? In the same way, I mean, he is a human rights giant, not only in the Japanese Canadian, but in the Japanese American, and yet today's people don't know about. How is that possible? So I think we have a lot of things that we can be promoting together, and that I think collaboration is a good way to proceed.
So basically, I just wanted to just say something, cut some commentary as a younger Japanese Canadian who's on social media quite a bit and who has a really good relationship with my Wajima. So I've learned quite a bit from her about history and things like that. And what I found through my work with art and workshops and things is there really is a desire of the younger people to kind of modernize, but also go back to the history. Like I feel like digitizing has really taken us away from the traditional methods of learning about, I guess, like hyakunin, everything like that, right? So there's desire to modernize, also learn about our history and preserve it. Make sure there's like a huge push for activism in these like kind of preserving history, I guess, movements, right? So, and especially with my veterans work with the PTJC, we've seen a huge influx of young people coming to like the Natsumatsuri, the Christmas party, all sorts of things. There's like a huge, like all the just Canadian students as well coming from the anime. Like, I really think it's a good idea to kind of push that collaboration as soon as possible because I think the young people are ready for it, especially as we saw with the 3D kind of presentation there. We're ready to kind of modernize, but also appreciate history.
Thank you so much for that. That's really wonderful. One more question.
It's not so much a question, just more kind of adding on to what everyone else is saying, just adding to the commentary. As a representative of the JET program, it was talked about that young folks are really focusing on finding jobs and finding connections. As an alumni of the JET program, it is a very common topic that's brought up and a common concern, continuing to foster the connection. And when a lot of JETs do come back, they are looking for opportunities like these to continue their work within the community, and it's really hard to find, especially within Edmonton and within Northern Alberta. So I think that would also be a fantastic resource, to latch onto. Last year I had the privilege of being in Ottawa at the Ambassador's residence, and it was the 35th anniversary of the JET program in Canada. And this was something that was talked about quite passionately, was finding ways to continue to encourage the JET program to grow and the alumni associations to grow. I'm not being too self-serving, but I think it is definitely a resource for the PTJC to look into.
Just to tap onto that, because of COVID, everybody got into this webinar situation and, it changed the world, of course. But I think there's a little bit of webinar fatigue happening now, too. I know that people are wanting to get together in person again. That doesn't go to say that for seminars, if the PTJC arranges something like what we're doing for Kakehashi out of our foundation and get industry people together to meet with the young alumni that are looking for jobs and talk about job opportunities, both in Canada and in Japan, right? Because there may be jobs in Japan that you might want to go back to, and I know a lot of young people do. You can go cross Canada with it through a webinar. It doesn't just have to be those in Edmonton. I mean, I'd be happy to, if I could, to bring them into the one that we're hosting very soon with JETRO. JETRO, we partnered with JETRO and with Persona. They're doing a special thing, actually, JETRO, in Japan. So we have the Japan representative that's doing a talent search to speak to the alumni of Kakehashi. So this kind of thing can be done through webinar, and I think it's extremely important because many of the young people who've gone to Japan, whether it's through JET, Kakehashi, Working Holiday, what have you, they are looking to continue that relationship with Japan, and they're looking for jobs that will continue their, engagement with Japan. There's not a lot around, so we have to find that for them, help them, facilitate introductions to potential employers who are looking for Japan specialists.
In terms of the function of the connecting people, I also wanted to acknowledge that not virtual, but in person, PTJC is the only one institution until last year that hosted the JLPT test for 2 times a year, and especially only one institution in summer until last year. Thanks to that cooperation, not only from Edmonton, not only from Alberta, but across Canada and even from United States, the people wanted to take tests for the future possibility come to Edmonton and then stay here. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity also for them to learn about the center. I think we've already done those efforts, but it's also good to utilize that occasion to let them know about the center. I think its annual profile is very important, but I also wanted to emphasize that as Dr. Master's lecture mentioning that the humanities are sort of base for everything, and I completely agree. So I truly appreciate those efforts that the center has continued running the test and running the speech contest, and those are the fundamental thing even before we are looking for the future, bright future. So truly appreciate the continuing this outreach. Thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear.
Have been reflecting on some of the themes I've heard over the day. And the three things that come to my mind are, first of all, how many times you heard people say, I didn't know that. Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know that. It seems to me that there's an awful lot that we don't know, not only about the work that the center has done, but what's happening elsewhere. Which leads us to the second point, which was that of cooperation. Not just collaboration, but cooperation in, I think, the deepest sense that Rich Sutton was trying to convey. Now, how can we cooperate more deeply? And one way is to just start sharing links with one another. Links about the work that we do. And why am I saying that relates to the third point, which was the attention and the need to have greater involvement of youth. In my work with youth, and I have international students that come to work with me every year, they tell me about how they search for what is the U of A, who am I, why would they want to come here? And they do a lot more research using the internet than certainly, well, there was no internet when I was a student. And so these links and this effort to cooperate and the knowledge and information about things that are going on are more important than ever.
Thank you, Dr. Bilash. That's wonderful to hear.
Whether with Japan Foundation or our foundation, I mean, we've got national reach, actually, or global reach, so happy to put those links on, and we have a lot of young people always looking for work at our foundation, as a matter of fact, so we can put those links on, happy to share them. We have quite a strong subscription.
But there are projects that aren't been talked about here that we want to connect.
Absolutely.
As well, and I know there's a little bit of Zoom fatigue, but boy, that's a great way to share, to collect talks or webinars that people can click into.
Wonderful. Thank you all.